You know the concept, you wanted more, so here it is. The first atomic theory. But who came up with it? Well, it was this guy, a pre-Socratic Greek philosopher by the name of Democritus, often credited as the father of atomism, along with his mentor Leucippus, who is credited as actually building the foundation for this theory, while Democritus explained it and refined it better. But it kind of sounds like a school group project for which Democritus got all the credit. Also, while researching this, I found out that Democritus went to Persia and he said, and I quote, "I would rather uncover one scientific explanation than become the king of Persia." Which, I don't know what he had against them. Maybe because they invaded their country and killed like 300 guys, I don't know. Anyways, what's the idea? Well, it's kinda simple. Everything is made of tiny, indivisible, not invisible, but indivisible particles called atomos, that move through empty space and combine to form all matter. Unlike many of his contemporaries, Democritus believed that the universe is purely mechanical, like no gods needed. His idea was groundbreaking because it suggested like a world governed by physical laws rather than supernatural stuff. This approach laid the foundation for later scientific inquiry, even though Democritus had no way to experimentally prove his claims. So basically, he guessed the fundamental nature of reality 2000 years before modern science could prove him right. Meanwhile, other philosophers debated if fire or water was the ultimate element. He got the biggest "I told you so" in history, only to be ignored for centuries. But how does it hold up? Surprisingly well. While atoms aren't actually indivisible, Democritus' core idea laid the groundwork for chemistry and physics. His theory was way ahead of its time, even though he lacked experimental proof. Today, we know that atoms consist of protons, neutrons, electrons, and the other good stuff, but he got the basic idea down pretty damn well. So I think it deserves an A tier. Well, who came up with it? Heraclitus, an ancient Greek philosopher from Ephesus, known for his cryptic and paradoxical statements, and unlike many other philosophers of his time, he wrote in an aphoristic style, which is basically just short and cryptic writing. Often called the obscure or the weeping philosopher because of his pessimistic outlook on humanity, he had little patience for ignorance and believed most people were too blind to recognize his ideas. But what's the idea? Well, everything is constantly changing, like how this button changes from subscribe to subscribed or the like to blue. Please, I'm this. Nothing remains the same. He believed that the world is in a perpetual state of transformation, driven by an underlying order he called the Logos. Unlike other philosophers, Heraclitus embraced change as a fundamental nature of reality. It is in a sense the oldest version of "it is what it is." But does it hold up? Well, absolutely. From quantum physics to modern psychology, the idea that change is inevitable is more than relevant. Whether it's adapting to new technology, political shifts, personal growth, Heraclitus was onto something. His philosophy finds echoes in Buddhist teachings on impermanence, in chaos theory, and even self-help books which encourage adaptability. And it's now seen as a key trait for success. I think it's gonna go between S and A tier. Okay, as per usual, let's start with the creator, who is Jean-Jacques Rousseau, an 18th century philosopher, writer, and composer. He was a key figure of the Enlightenment and had major influence on political theory and education. Rousseau had a complicated personal life. Despite writing about the importance of education and nurturing children, he abandoned his own kids, which talk about living by your own principles. But what's the idea? Humans are naturally good, but corrupted by society, and we should collectively form fair and just governments instead of just being ruled by oppressive institutions. Rousseau had an idea in which individuals enter a social contract where they give up some personal freedom in exchange for communal benefits. Basically, a society built on collective will and moral virtue. By the way, he had like 4 kids with this poor lady, and every time she gave birth, he was like, well, nothing honorable in being a dad, so fuck him. About it holding up though, it's a bit of a mixed result, since his ideas on democracy and equality inspired fucking revolutions, but modern psychology suggests that human nature is a bit more complicated. While social structures do influence morality, evidence suggests that people are not inherently good or bad, but shaped by a mix of nature and nurture. In an era of global interdependence, his vision of a return to a natural state seems a bit impractical. However, his advocacy for a democratic and just society still stands the test of time, so a good beat here. This theory was mainly developed by Hippocrates, who's considered the father of medicine, and later on expanded by Galen, a Roman physician. They sought natural explanations instead of blaming the gods, as you do. Okay, but what's the main idea? Well, human health depends on 4 bodily fluids, and I'm going to read them as they are. Blood, phlegm, black bile, and yellow bile. Too much or too little of any, and you got yourself a trip to the... this. It was one of the earliest attempts at medical theory, and no matter how wrong, it dominated Western medicine for centuries. The cure for literally everything back then was either bloodletting or just drink some more wine. Imagine going to the doctor and he tells you to let off some blood because you have a fever. And I think none of us are surprised to hear that it doesn't hold up at all. It was completely debunked by modern medicine. Some alternative medicines still cling to it, but science has moved far beyond those medieval ideas. Sadly F tier, but it gets like a C+ for creativity, because phlegm. Jeremy Bentham, an 18th century English philosopher and social reformer, best known for developing utilitarianism. He was a child prodigy, entering university at 12, and was obsessed with logic, even creating formulas to measure happiness. So you know how we can maximize and minimize stuff? Well, guess who coined those terms? Yep, our boy Jeremy. Also, he had his fucking body preserved at the UCL, but as of right now, I think only his head remains, and I advise you strongly to not look it up. Let's get to the idea though. The best action is the one that maximizes happiness for the greatest number of people. He tried to quantify pleasure and pain with a philosophic calculus, which is basically a moral math formula to determine ethical decisions. The basic idea of morality should be based on outcomes rather than intentions, which was a shift from the traditional religious and deontological ethics. It's useful for policy making and economics, but ethical dilemmas like the trolley problem expose its flaws. Balancing majority happiness with individual rights isn't easy. Critics argue that pure utilitarianism can justify morally questionable actions, so it goes to C tier. And that's all for this one. Thank you for watching.